Hello Internet, Taliesin here, and today we are talking the new introductory scenario to the new World of Warcraft expansion, Shadowlands, because pretty much the whole opening shebang is now playable over on the alpha, and we now know how our adventure in the Realm of Death starts, and plenty more besides, in a pretty intense storyline that lifts the veil on a few mysteries, but also asks some incredibly tantalizing questions regarding who even created the Shadowlands and where those creators might be, as well as some hints about changing situations a little closer to home too. Basically, there are some juicy lore nuggets in this Shadowlands Happy Meal, and I want to pull them apart and suck on the juicy speculation goodness within. So, in this video, we are going to be taking a look at that scenario, which means a big, beautiful red bot spoiler bot right from the get-go, I'm afraid. So if you don't want to know anything about anything in Shadowlands, seriously, don't be a dick, go and watch something else. So join us for a proper old-school Taliesin Talks as we look at the introductory experience in World of Warcraft Shadowlands and ask, where are all the faction leaders? What is Calia Menethil doing here? But Helya though? But the Jailer though? And who are the first ones? Okay, go 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 go. The intro experience begins with Darian Mograine summoning us to the Arcarus, and already we realise there is a whole chunk of story that appears to have happened before Shadowlands has even begun. Key leaders on both sides of the faction divide have been abducted by Sylvanas' minions, and as we will soon learn when we get to Icecrown, those key leaders are Anduin, Jaina, Thrall, and Bane. So coincidentally, the ones that we spent the most time with in Battle for Azeroth. But they gone, okay? They gone now. And this is clearly quite a huge world event that's gone down at some point between now in 8.3 and the beginning of the next expansion. And at first, I was really nervous that these abductions were going to be portrayed in the upcoming Shadows Rising novel, which is something I didn't want to see at all. I like the Warcraft novels, okay, but I am a much bigger fan of the approach of books like Before the Storm, which tell a more contained story, yeah, connected to in-game events, and even contributing to them, but leaving us, the player, in a position where we can totally still understand the story if we hadn't read them. The opposite of that would be the almighty mess that happens at the end of War Crimes, during which Garrosh escapes his prison and, you know, kind of, I guess, travels through space and time to alternate Draenor. And look, I've read that book, I've listened to the audiobook, and I still can't 100% tell you what's going on there, okay? And it's why when WoD launched, everyone was like, yeah, sure, okay, yeah. Now, these four faction leaders being abducted wouldn't be quite on that level, but it is a pretty major event to just log in one day and have jarringly happened off screen. So I was pleased to see in her interview with Accolon, link in the description below, author Madeleine Roux seemed to confirm that these events weren't covered in Shadows Rising. That means they will almost certainly play out as a pre-patch or in-game cinematic events. Oh, hey, maybe that credible looking fake cinematic still that the fake leaks said were to do with 8.3 will turn out to be legit, but you know, just in a totally different way than the fake leakers said it would be. But however it's realised, it has happened by the time we get here. And as Mograine portals us to Icecrown, we see Bolvar has gathered what's left of the Alliance and Horde leadership to check out his brand new post-Sylvanas broken helm of domination. And it's in these groups of leaders that we find our next interesting point. Because the Alliance leadership group is fairly predictable. Mekator, Gen, Bronzebeard, Alleria, and Tyrande. But the Horde contingent is, by comparison, a whole lot more ragtag. You've got Lorthamar and Tharisra, obviously, because, well, you know. Rokan is the official troll representative these days, but then we have Valeera, who isn't associated with the Horde at all, and in fact has said many times that if she has loyalty to anyone, then it's the House of Rin, which at the moment consists of just one beautiful angel-faced crying boy who's weirdly more attractive when he cries. Then there's Calia Menethil, who would appear by her positioning in this group to be the Forsaken representative, which is a little bit weird because, well, frankly, she's not. Or at least, she's not yet. Calia, very quickly, for those who don't know, is the royal older sister of Arthas Menethil, who was once, kind of accidentally, engaged to Deathwing. Yeah, that's a long story, but you didn't hear it wrong, she was engaged to Deathwing. And who went missing during Arthas' Scourge invasion of his hometown Lordaeron in Warcraft 3. But the first appearance of her in a Warcraft game was in the Priest Orderhall campaign in Legion, where she turned out to be alive, and to have completely renounced any claim on the Menethil name or Lordaeron throne, but very specifically specifically is not a member of the Alliance. In Before the Storm, she is murdered by Sylvanas while trying to reconnect Forsaken and living family members before being raised by the resident Netherlight Crucible Naru as a kind of weird lightbound undead? In-game in BFA, she turns up with freshly raised Derek Proudmoore as they try to come to terms with their untypical undeaths together, before both turn down an invitation to join the Alliance as they are more concerned with helping other new undead folks do the same, which prompts Lillian Voss to put them in touch with the raised Night Elf Rangers that Sylvanas created in Darkshore, which is cool. I think Calia is an interesting character, but to me, one of the reasons she's so interesting is precisely because of how little she gives a shit about the Alliance and Horde divide. And yet here she is, standing exactly where you'd expect to find the Forsaken leader in our little Horde gang. So, is Calia Menethil the new leader of the Forsaken in Shadowlands? Well, it's a prospect which the forums are, as you'd imagine, ecstatic about. I sure as fish hope not. Everything about this makes me want to puke. Calia is like a Barbie doll, empty inside. She has even looked pretty alive than 99% of Forsakens. This is just another kick in the Horde's lifeless body. Rip to the Forsaken. I love that last comment, by the way, because, well, yeah, rip Forsaken. And much as I genuinely really enjoy the Calia story so far, I don't really want to see her as Forsaken leader either. We've got the beautiful, wonderful, perfect Lillian Voss for that. And yeah, okay, so she said she doesn't want to be leader, but she said she didn't want anything to do with the Horde before BFA. But you love it, Lillian. We all know you. Don't play coy with us, Lillian. Be our queen. For what it's worth, this is what I think is going on here. It makes perfect sense for both Valera and Calia to be here in this scene. Valera probably wants to know what happened to her boy Anduin and what she can do to help. And Calia appears very keen to talk to Tyrande about the Kaldorei, which shouldn't be very surprising. She has spent the last few months holed up with a bunch of dead Kaldorei, helping them work through their death issues together. Calia is most likely here trying to find out if there's any possibility of reintegrating those Forsaken Night Elves back into Kaldorei society, exactly like she tried to do with Forsaken humans in Before the Storm. And obviously Tyrande isn't listening. She's an elf with a very specific and single-minded mission right now. All she wants to do is to get into the Shadowlands and hunt down Sylvanas. Talk about anything else is met with outright hostility. But my point is, it's not weird that Valeria and Calia are here right now, just that they are standing in the Horde group. Now I've got a feeling this might have as much to do with symmetry as anything else. There's 5 in each group and both groups walk around a bit here. It's probably literally just easier to script that movement with the same number in each group. And this isn't a prediction, but I wouldn't be totally surprised if by the time Shadowlands goes live, Calia and Varisa are standing away from the Horde group. Maybe their places are filled with a couple of other well-known racial Horde leaders like Firepaw? The Forsaken are heading into a post-Sylvanas future, whether we like it or not, and someone is going to be their new leader, whether that be Calia, Lillian, or some cool new desolate council of many characters, another idea that I think would be pretty awesome. But Calia is definitely going to be important in guiding or shaping the new Forsaken identity in one way or another, so we best all get used to it. Anyway, back to the plot, because it's decided by the faction leaders that it is far too dangerous for the faction leaders to go to the Shadowlands, so instead the faction leaders decide you should go instead, and you say yes because you're an idiot. As you move the pieces of the Shattered Helm into various magic places to open a portal, Bolvar says not to even worry about the Chicken Chick faction leaders because Mo Grain and his Death Knights have totally got your back, which is lovely, even if the Knights of the Ebon Blade appear to be mostly pandas these days, which I'll be honest, doesn't quite fill me with confidence. But Bolvar also says some pretty interesting things about the Shadowlands itself. He says that death comes to claim Azeroth. It falls to you to defend her. And this is a sentiment that is echoed by the Jailer later on. We'll talk about it later, which seems to flat out tell us the objective of the baddie here, because the Shadowlands is the realm where mortal souls from all over our reality's universe go to when they die. But the Jailer and Sylvanas do seem to be specifically concerned with getting their hands on Azeroth. And when I say Azeroth, is that the planet, the life on the planet, or do they mean the world soul itself? Bolvar also says that when he wore the helm, he could sense a dark presence at the edge of my consciousness. Not Arthas, not Ner'zhul, something else. And that's why he's not going to the Shadowlands with you, because he fears he would become bound to the will of its true master. And okay, stop right there, because who is the true master of the Helm of Domination that Bolvar is speaking about here? the dark presence? Well, the obvious implication is definitely that it's the Jailer himself, right? The aesthetic certainly fits. Like, I totally buy that the Jailer would wear this hat. It is totally his style. But would that really make sense? If the Jailer is the true master of the helm, I know this isn't official yet, obviously, and not yet clarified in-game at all, but the suggestion in a couple of interviews does certainly seem to be that Dreadlords stole the helm from the Shadowlands rather than forging it themselves, as we originally thought, which is fine, awesome. But in that case, wouldn't the Jailer want it back? Like, Sylvanas is working with him now, solos Bolvar and takes the helm off him, then rips it apart to open the way to the Shadowlands in the first place. But if she had just recovered her tattooed buddy's stolen hat, wouldn't he have made, you know, bringing the pieces back to him part of the plan, instead of just leaving them in Icecrown? Surely if he really was the true master of the helm, he'd want it back, even if it were in 5 pieces, right? Unless leaving it in Icecrown so we could use it to get to the Shadowlands is part of his plan, of course, which is possible. But it does mean that the true master of the helm could be someone else too, though, doesn't it? Like, maybe the Arbiter, or someone else entirely that we don't even know about yet. It's a possibility for sure. Oh, and by the way, Bolvar totally does follow us into the Shadowlands in the end, so maybe he's not so scared of becoming bound to the Helm's true master after all, or maybe he forgot that that could happen and he totally will become bound to the Helm's true master. I don't know. I guess let's all keep a very close eye on Bolvar for the rest of the expansion, yeah? Anyway, with the bits of the Helm all in place, the leaders are like, bye idiot, thanks for doing the really dangerous thing that we didn't want to, except Tyrande, who is all like, psych, I'm coming too, suck it Sylvanas, and leaps in after us, at which point, oh boy, this expansion is ready to begin. And yes, I know this video is already like 15 minutes long at this point, but it moves a lot faster from here on in, I promise. It appears that there will be a cool ass cinematic here to show us crash landing into the moor and getting totally owned by moor creatures before the scenario starts proper, with our forces dispersed and us trying to gain a foothold and maybe even find some of those celebrities that we've been sent here to rescue. And this is our first proper look at the moor zone, and it is a belter. I can't be alone in my slight worry that this zone was, you know, like really brown, like very, really rather brown, and I didn't know how I was going to feel about all that brown, but I was foolish for ever having even the slightest doubts about the art team, because this entire place is just awesome, jagged and nightmarish and surprisingly varied and dangerous feeling. And I don't know, should we just look at this skybox for a bit maybe? Should we just do that? Yeah, let's do that. After kicking some bony butt and following some icy clues, we do manage to find Jaina Proudmoore, who is making a last stand of sorts, protecting the injured thrall, because of course she is. And now look, I never really went along with the whole Jaina thrall ship, okay? But it's pretty hard to ignore in this scenario, and I don't know how I feel about it. You're a married orc thrall, I was at your wedding! We help the pair fight off some dark, moor-sworn Kyrians, something that we later mention at the beginning of the Bastion storyline. And Jaina leads us to this little place she knows where we can hide out for a bit, and seems to imply in her voice lines with us that she has been in the moor for quite a while, long enough that she doesn't quite know how long exactly. Could this be an example of that weird timey-wimey time passing differently in the Shadowlands thing that Ian Hazacostas mentioned in that interview that one time, and that inspired 1,000 Belilar videos about a post-Shadowlands time skip? Well, it's kind of impossible to tell right now because we don't actually know how long Jaina has been gone in Azeroth time yet. Like, when did she get abducted? Probably weeks or months ago, but maybe not. If she'd said, oh man, I've been here for years, or how did you follow me so quick? I've only just got here, something extreme like that either way, then we'd be able to read into it. But at the moment, it's just very hard to tell. It kind of seems like her time has probably been passing at the same kind of rate as ours, but who knows? It's clear that however long they have been here, all our heroes have been on the receiving end of some pretty nasty treatment at the hands of the Jailer. And Jaina says that it almost felt as though he was testing them for something, which definitely brings back memories of Arthas in Wrath of the Lich King, where it turned out the baddie's entire plan was to weed out the best of the Horde and Alliance as they fought their way through Northrend and Icecrown, so that he could then kill us, raise us, and have the #1 most badass Death Knights available. We decide to capture a Death Elemental so that Mograine can torture it and find a way out of the moor, a very important mission that Thrall and Jaina are too tired to join us on. So, you know, Thrall and Jaina are just gonna stay in the cave together, alone. Come on, Thrall, think of your wife and kids. Do you think what happens in the moor stays in the moor? Because honestly, I don't think that's how your wife and kids are gonna see it, okay? And also, rescue Anduin. When we find him, Anduin is all tied up, just how we like him, and we are promised another cinematic or cutscene where Sylvanas is totally mocking the shit out of him and being all evil, probably in an effort to make him cry, because as we know, he is like so much more attractive when he cries. And this is, by the way, so far, our only encounter with Sylvanas in the whole of the Shadowlands alpha experience that I've played through. And I've played through whole chunks of every zone now. That expansion queen is nowhere to be found. I'm guessing she might have a bigger role to play in the pre-patch stuff when all these abductions happen, and presumably later on in the game, but this might just be it for the leveling experience. One swift rescue later, and Anduin is all ours, with only Bane Bloodhoof to rescue to complete our Best Friends Forever More Escape Team Super Team, and Bane is being held captive on a ridge called Zorval's Cauldron, which is also where we'll find the mysterious waypoint obelisk thing that Mogaine's ghost torture said might be able to get us out of the moor. So, you know, we were heading that way anyway. We would totally have come to save you anyway, Bane. I just want to make that very clear. We totally would. But also, we were going that way anyway, so it's handy. That's what I'm saying. To get there, we have to cross the River of Souls via a bridge where we bump into everyone's favourite tentacly baddie sex fish, or possibly second favourite tentacly baddie sex fish, Helya. Here she is, saying that the skies of Azeroth will be blackened by her Moorsworn. These evil Kyrian are her creations. Just in case you thought awesome hair and absolute thickness was all she brought to the table. Thrall decides that the best course of action at this point is to throw his axe at her head, which I mean, nice one, I guess, Thrall. And I'm sure that's not the last we've seen of Helya, but it is the last we've seen of Thrall's brand new axe that he made out on his farm while he grew his shitwheat. We are cast into the River of Souls, which is absolutely heartbreaking, as countless newly or not so newly passed souls wash over us, their speech bubbles showing the shock and confusion at their arrival in the afterlife. I really recommend that you take a moment here to watch some of these go by. It's really well done. And after regrouping on the banks of the river, we get our first rather spectacular proper reveal of the Jailer himself. The definitive big baddie of this expansion, who will definitely not end up having absolutely any redeeming features or sympathetic motives at all. This is just a big old bad baddie, yes sirree, just like Sylvanas. And we get the tantalizing promise of yet another cutscene, this time showing Bane getting thrown off the towering battlements that they're standing on. But don't worry, Cow fans, because he's basically okay, he just needs a bit of time to chill. The perfect opportunity to go find Thrall a new weapon to replace his axe, which he threw at Helya. That great idea. And luckily there are loads of weapon racks around this part of town, and after being honestly a little more choosy than beggars really should be, we eventually find something that Green Jesus loves. Another axe, like literally the one that you can buy from a vendor in your Legion artifact haul if you haven't bothered to get your artifact yet. You know, Thrall, if we could just get to a bank, I've got the Doom Hammer in one of those tabs somewhere. You can use that if you like. Haha, no, only joking. The Doom Hammer's mine now, Thrall. Enjoy your shitty green quality axe. And now, at last, the gang is back together and everything is in place to finally get out of the moor. So we do a sneaky up to the mysterious waystone obelisk thing, and this is where we have another tantalizing bit of lore, which will definitely be important for the rest of the expansion, so are you paying attention? As we approach the waystone, which is supposed to be dormant, it begins to react to our presence, or specifically, to your presence, that of the player character, and there appears to be a strange azurite glow around you too. Anduin says that he's pretty sure this is not a Titan artifact, saying that it appears to be made by a different hand. And then when the Jailer turns up with all his minions, he seems pretty surprised that what he refers to as a relic of the first ones is responding to a mortal, which it totally does as we activate it, and we get yet another cutscene which will apparently show how the best friends super gang fight off the Jailer's forces just long enough for you and only you to escape the moor. Unlucky Jaina, Thrall, Bane and Anduin, I will never forget you, and end up in the safety of Oribos, but not before the Jailer offers his parting shot. Death comes for the soul of your world. And yes, there's a lot to unpack, isn't there? Firstly, most importantly, who are the First Ones. The Jailer's name drop isn't the only time that we've heard the First Ones referred to in the alpha so far. In Oribos, 2 brokers are heard discussing the city and say it pales in comparison to the other works of the First Ones. You have seen their handiwork, the patterns, the geometry, and elsewhere in the same city, 2 attendants are overheard talking about them too. I believe it demonstrates the unlimited creation of the First Ones. They made all things and blessed us with the purpose. So what, did the First Ones create all things, as in everything, like the Shadowlands and our reality? We are reminded here of Ian Hazakostas' interview with Zoltan TV, link in the description. Just as Azeroth was shaped by the Titans, as we've come to discover, the Shadowlands also was shaped by forces. For sure, there are parallels between the Titan pantheon that rules over our plane of existence and sort of the pantheon of death that has ruled over the Shadowlands. And so, you know, yikes. For what it's worth, and obviously this is quite literally all we have to go on right now, I feel like the First Ones likely didn't create the Shadowlands, just as the Titans didn't create our reality. They were more the architects of it, shaping the rules and society and covenants and infrastructure that we see in place there now. Rules that the attendants call the purpose and treat as something of a religious screed. And if the First Ones merely shaped and ordered the Shadowlands, then it doesn't mean that they have to be as old as the Shadowlands itself, just as the Titans aren't the oldest life in our reality. So the parallels are obvious. The First Ones are clearly a relatively unknown and by now semi-mythical bunch, even to the denizens of the Shadowlands, talked about in hushed tones and old relics which are often a mystery or perhaps even completely misunderstood, much like our relationship with the remnants of the Titans on Azeroth. So I don't really put too much stock into the attendants saying the First Ones created everything for that reason. But it does beg the question, are there any First Ones still around? And what significance will they have? There is another term that we see pop up on the alpha a lot too, the progenitors. Items like the Soulkeeper Crystal, rumoured to have been created by the progenitors, the progenitor shard, the progenitor console. There's even an uncategorized spell in the data right now called Death of a Progenitor. Are they the same as the First Ones? Possibly progenitor can mean original or originator, i.e. first, but it can also mean just ancestor or even parent. So I find it likely that these are just older inhabitants of the Shadowlands that came before, although what happened to them and where they are now, we also have no idea. And the next obvious question, is the Jailer a First One? Did he help shape the Shadowlands and then get totally dicked by his kin into being stuck in the Maw for all eternity? Is he kind of like a Sargeras type figure? Well, I don't think so, because there's another set of beings that we hear getting talked about in Oribos too. The Eternal Ones. I have heard tales that long ago the Eternal Ones gathered in the Arbiter's chamber. Are they not the most powerful beings in the Shadowlands? To which the reply is, beings like the Archon and the Winter Queen want only souls, and that we cannot give them yet. So the Eternal Ones seems to refer to the specific leaders of the Covenants and Zones. The Winter Queen rules over Ardenweald and also my heart. The Archon is in charge of Oribos, and that would mean that Sire Denathrius of Revendreth, the Primus of Maldraxxus, and yes, the Jailer of the Maw are also Eternal Ones. Again, we don't know, but to put it into Azerothian terms, that would make them something like maybe Titan Watchers, created or bestowed the power to rule over each individual slice of the Shadowlands and keep everything ticking over on behalf of the First Ones. And if that's true, again, the Jailer probably didn't get the best deal in this situation, did he? It's uncertain if this would make the Arbiter an Eternal One as well. If she is, then she's definitely one with less agency or freedom than the others. She has a very specific job being the Death Realm's sorting hat, which was pretty full-time until the Jailer started messing with things. Maybe the First Ones are indeed dead and gone, and the Jailer's recent power move is an attempt to ascend from the least attractive Eternal One gig to becoming a fully fledged First One, or at least fill the gap left in their wake. And if the First Ones really are like the Shadowlands equivalent of the Titans in our reality, well, then I'm pretty sure taking over Azeroth and stealing the power of an unborn Titan world soul wouldn't exactly hurt the Jailer in his objective, would it? And you know, even if everyone thinks the First Ones really are dead and gone, that's kind of what we thought about the Titans too before Legion, wasn't it? And can I just put one word out there? Elune There has long been speculation that Accolon is perhaps some kind of titan or Naru or something. Shadowlands establishes that Accolon is worshipped on lots of planets other than Azeroth. Could she be one of the first ones? But what do you guys think? Do the revelations and tidbits of wider Shadowlands lore get you hyped for the coming expansion? Do you like the direction Blizz seem to be going in with their new plane of reality they're exploring? Will Thrall ever get a better axe? Let us know in the comments below. And thanks for joining us today. If you like this video, don't thank us. Thank our patrons who give their actual real-life money to make all of our work happen, because without them, there would be a whole lot less Taliesin and Methil. If you didn't like it, downvote the shit out of it. Remember, my name is Snowmixie. No, my name is Taliesin from me and Evertel and the Nyrin too. Until next time, cheerio.